Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Compassion and Courage Conversations in Healthcare. This is the podcast where we teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Today, my very special guest is my friend and nurse, Laurie Smith. Laurie, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I feel like it's been a couple of years since we saw each other, and I think the last time we did, I was very jealous because you had just gone to see the Rolling Stones in concert, and I was very jealous.
That's right. It has been a second since we were last together, Marcus, for sure. And that Rolling Stones concert was amazing. You should have been jealous.
I was jealous, and then this year I got to go and actually fulfill that wish of seeing them in concert. So
Awesome.
yeah, I feel pretty happy now that I've joined the ranks of the likes like you that got to see the band. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. And I want to cover a bunch of ground today. Should we just start at the beginning and tell us a little bit about you? Tell us where you're from and how you became a nurse, and we'll just take
Yeah,
it from there. How's that sound?
that sounds great. And before we get started, I'm just so happy to be able to have a conversation with you again, Marcus. You always uplift me when I leave our conversations, and I just appreciate the inspiration that you are. So thanks for having me on today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But let's focus on you because you are the star today.
Well, let's see. I got my start in healthcare at the age of 16. My mom was a combat medic in the Army and really inspired me to start thinking about healthcare. I started working as a certified nurse's aide at the hospital in my hometown and decided that I really loved that. So after I graduated from high school, I went on to become a licensed practical nurse and then progressed from there to get my bachelor's degree and then my master's degree. And I'm currently enrolled in a PhD program for organizational psychology right now. The learning just never ends. But that 30 years of healthcare experience has been an awesome career for me. I have done way too many cool things that I never would have imagined when I became a nurse. I've worked with teams all over the country, in Asia, the Middle East, North America, Europe. It's been so much fun. I've just had a great time learning from other cultures and other leaders in healthcare. I've definitely been blessed.
So you were 16 years old. You became a CNA. What even got you interested in working in healthcare in the first place? You said your mom was a medic, but
Yeah.
you wanted to follow in her shoes.
Yeah, I just thought it was a really interesting field, and there was an opportunity in my hometown. And the director of nursing at the time, Diane Jones, just somebody that I really absolutely admired. And I still to this day learn so much from her. We're still connected. She gave me my first job as that CNA and took a chance on me. And it was just a really wonderful thing to be able to learn under leadership that was dignified, led with grace, collaboration, allowed for autonomy. It was a wonderful space to be able to begin.
Nice, nice. And so you've taken care of patients from 16 years old and into taking care of teams. So I want to ask you that question that I pose to my pre-meds at the beginning of every semester. And that's to share about an instance that someone was there for you or that you were there for somebody else. And you very kindly wrote a beautiful, I want to say tribute, but more than that, to your grandmother. And she was influential in your work throughout your life.
Yeah, she really was. When I think about unconditional love, that is absolutely my grandmother that comes to mind. I was a very free, independent teenager, always had been as a child. I was born and raised on a ranch in Montana. And so the sun would come up and I was outside riding horses by myself, floating down the river with my sister, whatever it might have been. We had a lot of independence there. And I think that's a blessing, and sometimes it can get in your way, right? When you've got that kind of independence under your belt. And so I was definitely challenging as a teenager, and my grandmother loved me no matter what. She was there with open arms, provided that gentle guidance and kindness. And I always felt like no matter what, I could go to her house and she was going to be there for me. And not only was she a great human being, she was a teacher by trade before she got married. And it wasn't until I became an adult that I really understood all of the gifts that she gave to my sister and I, particularly from the business side of things. At the age of 14, she started teaching us how to run the accounting, do the book works, the business side of everything for running the ranch. And as you can imagine, as a 14-year-old, that's not a very exciting thing to be a part of. And you can't appreciate what it is that you're doing at that moment. It wasn't until I became an adult and was able to apply some of the principles that she taught me and really gain that gratitude for everything that I had gained, probably more than I gained from getting a master's degree or any formal education, was gaining that confidence and knowing that I could take on any situation because of what I had learned through her teaching.
And she lived nearby?
She did. She was about a mile, I want to say about a mile away from my childhood home. So I could just walk down the road or jump on my bike or, whatever it was, get to her house. And she was always there. She had a big bell on the top of her house, and she would pull it and ring it when she wanted us kids to check in, make sure we were alive, feed us, make sure we were taken care of, and then be back out on our way again.
Yeah, very similar to how I grew up with my grandparents, just a walk away, and
Yeah.
almost like having a second or third and fourth parents around.
Yeah. Yeah. We were
Yeah,
pretty lucky in that respect, Marcus.
I think so. I think so. So when did you feel the call to leadership?
Oh, that's really an interesting question, actually. When I was working on my bachelor's degree, I recall sitting in a nursing management class. And Marcus, I literally sat in the last row of the class, cracked my book open a little bit, and tossed it on the desk next to me and said, "When is this semester over with? Zero interest. No, thank you. I'll pass." I really just wanted to be a nurse and was so excited about that. It wasn't until, I was working in a busy emergency department and had become a charge nurse. And the manager at the time, I don't know what she saw in me, she saw something in me and pulled me aside for a conversation about potentially applying for a clinical coordinator position, which was an assistant manager essentially. And I thought about it for a little while, a long while, and then in the end decided to go ahead and put my application in. And I got that position, and I actually really loved the impact that I could have being the voice for our team and really understanding what it was that they needed and advocating for that. And I became part of the Shared Governance Council and understood how I could make an impact system-wide from that standpoint. And that became very intriguing to me. As I progressed, each role that I was in, I absolutely loved. I had no intention leaving that role. I was asked to step into various roles, and sometimes it took a little coaxing because I really enjoyed all of the roles that I had in nursing and didn't really ever want to leave any one of them. So it usually took me a little while to want to step into a different role.
What a blessing, though. You don't always hear that every role I was in, I wanted to stay in that role.
Mm-hmm.
That's a That's not something you hear every day. So, well, I'm glad you kept working up to what you're doing these days. So, what's the rest of the journey?
Yeah. Well, I continued to progress through my leadership career. I was the manager of a cardiovascular unit, the director of a med surge division, and ultimately the system chief nursing officer. And again, loved all of those roles. During the pandemic and before the pandemic, I had an executive coach who had a great impact on me. She was really phenomenal and had a great way of getting me to reframe, look at things differently, sort of dig into those blind spots in an unassuming way that was full of guidance and support, but still I was creating my own path forward. And I really loved that. During the pandemic, it was as challenging as it could be. You know, you and I had conversations during the pandemic about some of those challenges. And I decided to begin my executive coaching education at that time because I thought maybe if I learned those techniques, it would help my team. And I felt like I was using every skill that I had to lead the best that I could during the pandemic, yet I felt like there could be something more. And when I started learning how to use those coaching techniques and seeing the impact it had for our team, we were also working with a hospital in Germany, and I started using some of those techniques with that group and seeing the impact it had for that group. And then other hospitals that I was collaborating with started using some of those techniques. And I thought, wow, there's a gap here for healthcare right now in pulling together some of these techniques for teams of any size, really. And I decided to move into that full time. And it was about 18 months after we launched our program, Elevating Healthcare Leadership Impact, fully booked, had a little bit of a waiting list actually, and expanded. And so it's definitely helping to serve a need, and the impact that it's having for teams is just, it fills my cup. It just makes me happy.
Yes. Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit more about the results.
Our results are different for every single team. Any program that we do is individual. We can't take one program and apply it to the next organization because we really tailor it to their needs. So we've seen, for example, organizations who have struggled to get a shared governance structure within their system because of a lack of engagement, lack of trust, whatever it might be. We had an organization that struggled for about 2 years, and we helped them to break through that lack of trust between direct care and the leadership team. And they started with just a few shared governance councils and continued to add their councils shortly after, doubled their engagement on those councils, and have a really strong governance council now. And they have also applied new ways to monitor their metrics that other organizations are replicating, and they're applying for Magnet this year, which is pretty exciting.
That is exciting. And share with the listening audience what Magnet means for the non-clinical people of the group.
Magnet is the top tier designation or accreditation that an organization can get. It really is the epitome of nursing excellence. And what I personally have found from being a part of Magnet, I was part of a Magnet organization for 16 years. We were 4-time designated. I think less than 1% of hospitals at that time were 4-time designated Magnet hospitals. But it really pushed us to think differently, to continue to do better. A lot of the metrics are measuring against yourself. If you did this last year, what can you do this next year? And how do you see these improvements even more the following year? So you're setting these goals that are attainable, that you have a lot of control over. Some of the goals are national benchmarks that you don't have control over, but it really pushes you to make sure that you're implementing the latest evidence-based practice and learning from one another.
And it was at the Magnet Conference that I learned that you had seen the Rolling Stones without me. So it's a big event every year in the world of nursing, and it's kind of like Nursapalooza.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. There are about, I think, 13,000 nurses that attend that conference. It's coming up here
It's
pretty
big.
soon, the end of this month.
It's big. Are you attending this year?
I am. I try to go every year.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah. We'll have a booth there, so anybody who is at the Magnet Conference can look us up. We'll be in a booth near
Yeah,
the LinkedIn headshots booth, which is always a hot one.
very good. And if people want more information about what you do, um, you want to give your website and contact information?
Yeah, so we've got lots of free content on LinkedIn. I put out a newsletter every week, and I'm really trying to share just tips and things that leaders can use to employ in their organizations. So you can find me on LinkedIn. And you can also find my website, which is www.laurieleeleadership.com, LAURIELEE leadership.com. And you can also just direct message me through LinkedIn if you like. My email is also Laurie at laurieleeleadership.com.
Very good. Very good. Can I ask you some kind of random questions?
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's have some fun
Okay.
here.
So yeah, I always want to, I always like to ask people because, it just gives a little more idea of a personality. But let's go back to the time when you're 16 years old, you're a CNA, you're driving to work or you're hanging out with your friends after work, after school. What are you listening to on the radio?
Oh my gosh, one of the most amazing playlists ever. It was such a good time for music. But I would say probably one of the best jams for my best friends and I was Shoot by Salt and Pepper.
Excellent. I can just
Always
see
a
you
good
guys
one.
bopping down the road. Yes, to Salt and
Oh
Pepper. Nice. Nice. Oh, great stuff. And so let's let's talk a little bit about your leadership. I like to ask the kind of open-ended, vague question of who taught you leadership. And you already spoke a little bit about your grandmother starting to lead you into leadership. And you shared a little bit, I think, about one of your bosses in your very early days. But when you think about leadership, I know that oftentimes we can learn just as much from a bad example of leadership as we can from a good. Have you had situations where you have learned from bad leaders?
Yes. And honestly, I don't think I know a human being who hasn't
Right, right.
experienced that at one point. And as you're going through that in the moment, it's really hard to see the lessons and put yourself in that person's shoes in a way that gives you a little bit of a different lens for how can we find a common path? How can we make each other stronger? Um, Sometimes it's not always possible. We learn from our own mistakes and we learn from the mistakes of others. And what I try to do is pull the best of all of those folks that I've worked with and lead in a way that I would like to be led, in a way that not only makes me feel included, but makes me feel like I belong. Belonging is such an important piece of fostering a culture as a leader. Being invited to the table, having inclusion doesn't mean anything, in my opinion, if you don't have belonging. If you don't feel like you belong, but you're included, that's a very different situation.
What's the best way to help people feel like they belong?
Really working on our own emotional and social intelligence and working with people that can help uncover our own biases. We all have biases. We're human beings. It's the way that we're wired. We have these biases that are conscious, that we are aware of. We have unconscious biases that we're not aware of. And especially today in the technology that we're delving into each and every day, we have confirmation bias, right? Google, any of those search engines use algorithms to feed us what they know we search for and what we're looking for. And so sometimes we'll look things up, but we'll be fed an answer that we want. And we say, aha, I knew it. I am right. When in reality, there's so much complexity to human behavior and the way that we interact. The answer is probably somewhere in a gray area.
Mm, mm. So speaking of that, what's a book recommendation you have for leaders?
Oh, I really like this book called Thanks for the Feedback. I might even have it nearby here. I do. Right here. It's called Thanks for the Feedback, The Science and Art of Receiving Feedback Well, even when it's off base, unfair, poorly delivered, and frankly, you're not in the mood. It's by Douglas Stone and Sheila Dean. And it's a great way to sort of think about feedback as this invitation to be able to grow and be curious rather than be defensive and lose the opportunity to improve.
Nice, nice. That's going on my reading list.
It's a good one. I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you for that. What else is on your reading list at the moment?
Oh, let's see. I've got some good fiction mysteries that I'm reading, but there's always a leadership book in my bag. There's always a podcast that I'm listening to. Another great book is Atomic Habits, and it talks about how we're sort of wired to resist change and how to overcome that by habit stacking and making our habits easy to do, as easy as possible to do, and really sort of reflecting and thinking about the reward that we gain when we do those habits. So we can solidify those neural pathways that we have that say, yes, this is the trigger that's happening. This is the action that I've taken. This is the response that I got, and solidify. This is what we want to keep doing.
Nice, nice. You have a favorite fiction work?
I have a favorite fiction author. Frida McFadden is a great author. You read her books and you think you know what's going to happen in the end. You don't. You have no idea. There's a complete twist at the end. So she's a lot of fun to read.
Okay, that's going on my list as well. So thank you
Oh,
for
you'll like
those.
her books. You'll like her books, Marcus.
So my last question for you is, if you had the opportunity to have the world's largest billboard on the world's tallest mountain,
Yeah.
what's the message that you would want to broadcast to humanity?
I thought about this one quite a little bit, and if you're broadcasting to all of humanity, that's a big responsibility. And so I was thinking, in our differences, we find strengths. In curiosity, we find connection. And that's easier said than done when we have our own wiring to resist change, when we have our own biases. It takes a lot to stay curious and really figure out how we can leverage our differences. And we are 100% stronger when we have teams who have differences. I coach on this quite a bit, how to have healthy conflict. Because if we've got a team, my team's always heard me say this, as the CNO, I don't want a room full of bobbleheads. We have a problem if everyone's agreeing with everything that I say. number one, I don't know everything there is to know. I'm doing the best I can with what I have, right? And we're stronger together. And number two, if we are really putting all of those innovative ideas on the table and they're not all the same, we are probably going to make greater gains than if we had not. And three, if everyone's agreeing with you, usually there's a lack of psychological safety to come up with something different or to disagree with someone. So it's important to be able to have those different perspectives on a team.
I like it. Our strengths are in our differences. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, Laurie, thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Thank you for your friendship over the last several years, and I really look forward to the next time our paths cross.
Absolutely. I do as well. And thank you for the invitation, Marcus. I have enjoyed all of our conversations and I look forward to more.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. And listeners, thank you to you for being part of this episode of Compassion and Courage. Again, this is the podcast where we teach compassionate communication, provide perspective, and inspire resilience. Please visit marcusengel.com for your keynote speaking needs, hospital consulting and healthcare consulting needs, and books and videos. Thank you again so much for being part of this episode of Compassion and Courage.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.